Regardless of how long one's lived away from their roots, the quest to connect with a part of one's heritage will always be important. And our guest today, Jim, understands that connection.
My upbringing, in some ways, was sort of the typical Swedish upbringing, and the community that I grew up in was, incredibly Swedish. In terms of having an African mother, it's always something that people found really surprising, right? Because I don't necessarily look the part. She had a lot of influence on me, because even though I grew up in a small town and there wasn't necessarily a lot of other Africans around, she had a strong sense of identity and pride of who she is and where she comes from. In some of the Scandinavian countries, and I'm sure it's true elsewhere as well, you almost have to give up your identity to be accepted. You have to overcompensate for being African. And my mom never really engaged with that, because she's so proud of who she is. She never instilled in me that I was better than anybody else. It would later come to shape, who I was going to become later in life. The older I got, and especially as I entered my teens, and I started thinking about university and those things, I just realized that it was important for me to connect with the African side, which I didn't really experience that much of in Sweden, especially small town Sweden. And then in addition to that, I also wanted to be a global citizen. I wanted to connect with people from the rest of the world. So for me, it was a very natural thing to go to the US, study in the US. Eventually I ended up in the UK. And through traveling, through connecting with some of my mom's family in the US and making friends from all over the world, I just realized that actually, for the first time in my life probably, that my identity didn't matter. And I didn't have to explain myself to the same extent that I had before. I went back to Sweden for 2 years just to kind of test it out. And that's when I realized that how much I had changed. So I think sometimes when we travel, we experience other places, other perspectives. You always kind of have it in the back of your head that you're going to go back home. But in some cases, you can't go home, because home changes. You change. Your outlook, your perspective changes. I was happy to go there on holiday and spend time with my family, but it wasn't necessarily where I saw myself long term. When I joined CNN in London, because of my interest, I formed pretty good connections with the Africa team at CNN. So there were a couple of members of the Africa team in London, and then some in the US, and then on the continent as well. So I always pitched ideas, and I volunteered to do content beyond my 9 to 5. And for a lot of people, Africa is only associated with negative headlines. So I think I was guilty of that a little bit myself, but then you go there, you're on the ground, you meet the people, and I just think that it shifts your perceptions. So I've been to Ethiopia, I've been to Kenya, and I've been to Nigeria. I'm very interested in different parts of Africa. I have such a strong interest in Africa. It's because ever since my childhood, I've been on this journey to reconnect with the continent because of the fact that I have an African mother. But it goes deeper than that. I mean, I love being around Africans. I think Africans don't take themselves very seriously in some ways, and I think that's healthy. And like, if you look at Nigeria specifically, right? Nigerian culture is the very opposite of Swedish culture. Swedes tend to be very reserved. Nigerians are extremely outgoing, next level outgoing. They just go for their dreams. They don't take no for an answer. And culturally, I'm very Swedish. Like in some ways I'm not, but in other ways I'm extremely Swedish. So connecting with Nigerians, I really enjoyed that because it just makes you sort of question your approach, and then you see how other people do it, and it's interesting because you grow from it, you know, and that's why I definitely want to see more of Africa. I want to connect with people. I want to see all that the continent has to offer. I love African art, contemporary African art, and ultimately I want to share African experiences with people like myself in the West who have negative perceptions of Africa, because I want to challenge those perceptions. And I think ultimately, you know, if I can do that, that's probably going to have a big impact in terms of how they, you know, not only view Africa, but maybe view the rest of the world. So it's about building bridges for me. And it's quite therapeutic as well. My name is Jim Stenman. I'm a journalist, media professional living between London and Dubai, and I've been sharing my African experience on Far From Home.